By the late 1990 seconds, George Carlin owed millions of dollars he did not have. The career that had made him one of the most successful comedians in America had also, through a combination of choices and circumstances and the particular arithmetic of addiction, left him financially ruined at an age when most people in his position would have been comfortable. He was in his 60s. His wife was dying. He had more debt than he could count easily, and he was about to make some of the best work of his life. The path to the bankruptcy did not happen quickly. It accumulated the way most financial disasters accumulate, through years of small decisions that seemed manageable at the time, in a context where the money coming in was large enough to obscure what was going out. The cocaine had started in the 1970 seconds. It was everywhere in that world, in that decade. The clubs, the television studios, the backstage rooms of a touring comedian's life were all saturated with it. Carlin was not unusual in using it. He was unusual in how far he took it and how long it lasted. What began as the recreational habit of a working musician's world became, over the course of a decade, a serious dependency that consumed large amounts of money and larger amounts of time and attention that should have gone elsewhere. He was still working during the worst of it. That is one of the things that makes addiction in high-functioning people so difficult to see from the outside. The work continues. The performances happen, the audiences laugh, and the evidence of the problem exists mainly in the spaces between the visible work, in the accounting and the relationships and the long-term decisions that quietly deteriorate while the performance remains intact. The management of his finances during these years was inadequate, to put it charitably. Money came in from tours and television and the HBO specials, and a significant portion of it went out through the ordinary overhead of a performing career. A larger portion went toward the cocaine, and the remainder was not carefully tracked or invested in a way that would sustain him through the periods when work slowed. By the time the full extent of the problem became clear, the numbers were very bad. He checked into a drug rehabilitation facility in 1978, his first serious attempt to stop. He would check in again years later. The pattern of recovery and relapse that characterized his relationship with drugs lasted, in various forms, into the 1990 seconds. Each cycle cost something: the money, the time, the relationships, the specific quality of creative attention that is the first thing to erode when a person is not fully present in their own life. The bankruptcy, when it came, was not a surprise to the people closest to him. It was a recognition of something that had been visible for years to anyone paying attention. The surprise, for some people, was what happened after it. George Carlin did not slow down in the face of financial ruin. He did not retreat. He did not produce diminished work or coast on reputation, or spend his late career giving audiences the comfortable, familiar Carlin they had come expecting. He went the other direction entirely. Jerry Hamza, his manager of many years, described the period after the financial crisis as one of the most productive of Carlin's career. Not productive in the sense of volume, but productive in the sense of intensity. The material that emerged in the late 90 seconds and 2000 seconds had a quality that his earlier work, for all its intelligence, had not always possessed. It was less interested in being liked, less invested in the transaction between performer and audience, in which the comedian offers relief and the audience offers approval. The HBO special Complaints and Grievances, filmed in November 2001, is a useful document of where he had arrived. It is not a comfortable hour of television. It is the work of a man who has weighed what is at stake in a performance, and concluded that the truth is more important than the audience's ease. The anger in it is real, not performed anger, not the managed outrage of a comedian hitting familiar targets, but something older and more specific. The anger of a man who has seen clearly for a long time and is running out of patience with the pretense that things are other than they are. He was 64 years old when he filmed it. He had been through the drug years and the money and the grief of losing Brenda and the process of rebuilding his finances from a position of deep debt. He had arrived at a late career that he had not entirely expected to have, doing work he had not entirely expected to be capable of doing. The people who knew him in those years note something consistent. He was not bitter in the way the word is usually meant. Bitterness implies a turning inward, a withdrawal, a sourness that repels rather than engages. What Carlin had was different from that. It was more like clarity. The sensation of seeing something plain and true and refusing, at this point in his life, to pretend otherwise for the comfort of an audience that was largely pretending along with him. He had made his peace with the financial situation in the pragmatic way that people make peace with things that cannot be undone. He worked, he paid what he could, he continued to produce. The debts diminished over the years of the late-career HBO specials, which were commercially successful and critically admired in a way that kept the numbers moving in the right direction. Life is Worth Losing, filmed in 2005, is perhaps the darkest hour of comedy he ever committed to tape. It opens with a meditation on modern life's capacity for spiritual emptiness, and ends with a long, carefully constructed routine about the end of civilization, delivered in the flat tone of a man who has examined the evidence and reached a conclusion he does not find particularly surprising. The audience laughs. The laughter has an unusual quality. The word people use looking back at it is uncomfortable, and they do not mean that as a criticism. It's Bad For You, his final special, was filmed on March 1, 2008. He died on June 22 of the same year. The special contains some of the sharpest, most precisely constructed material of his career. He was 71 years old. He was still going faster than almost anyone else in the business. The arc from the financial crisis to those last specials is not the arc of a man who was broken by difficulty and recovered. It is the arc of a man who used difficulty as material, not in the confessional sense of a performer sharing his troubles with an audience to generate sympathy, but in the technical sense of a craftsman who takes what is real and makes something from it. The bankruptcy, the drugs, the grief, the anger, all of it went into the work. All of it came back out as something the audiences recognized as true. He had started his career trying to make people comfortable. He ended it trying to make them honest. The distance between those two projects is where all of the interesting things happened. He went broke at 60. He made his best work anyway. Some people need the comfortable circumstances to produce. George Carlin needed something else entirely.